And so, but that isn't the reality. I was struck, was it 4 years ago now? 3, 4 years ago that I went to Cana, Louisiana, to protest what had happened there to the black high school students. And in doing so, I flew to Atlanta and was driven across, because I had a driver, was driven over to Louisiana, and as we stopped along the way for gas, and food and things, I was amazed as a white clergy person, and I think this had more to do with being white than being a clergy person, how deferential the people of color in the South were to me. And I had this feeling that it was a deference that came from fear, not from respect. Things haven't changed. I noticed in myself, when we moved in August to a neighborhood where we are the ethnic minority, that there were vestiges of racism in me that I didn't think were there. That I had to encounter fears and stereotypes that hadn't been implanted in me as a child. And I think one of the most enlightening things I've ever done for myself was move into this neighborhood. Because it's one thing to have friends who are people of color. It's another thing to live in an area where people with their heads buried in hoodies are walking down the street at you, and you recognize yourself responding to stereotypes and not to the individual present. Last week, as you may know, there was an earthquake in Haiti. And I'd just like to read a little something, because I don't have it memorized, from our newsletter, which just got printed yesterday and is available on the rack at the back. Regarding the situation in Haiti, Pat Robertson of 700 Club fame, or infamy, announced that Haiti had made a pact with the devil, actually it was the Haitian slaves, to defeat French colonizers in the 1791 slave revolt. Ever since then, they've been cursed by one thing or another. After comments caused a firestorm, the 700 Club issued a statement saying, Dr. Robertson never stated that the earthquake was God's wrath. The statement that Dr. Robertson's compassion for the people of Haiti is clear. He called for prayer for them. No, Dr. Robertson, and doctor is a joke, Pat is a racist cracker. There's no two ways to look at it. The fact that you can say that earthquakes occur because people who are oppressed make pacts with the devil to get free means that you believe that these people should have remained oppressed and subservient and in their place. We need to hear from Dr. King. Rush Limbaugh, bastion of sensibility. Limbaugh made a number of derisive comments about the massive aid effort the U.S. government has launched regarding Haiti. At one point, Limbaugh said, besides, we've already donated to Haiti. It's called the U.S. income tax. This will play right into Obama's hands. He's humanitarian, compassionate. They'll use this to burnish their, shall we say, credibility with the black community. It's made to order for them. Limbaugh also said, there are people that have been trying to save Haiti just as we've been trying to save Africa. You just can't keep throwing money at it because the dictatorships there take it all. And I comment more about that in the newsletter. Rush, too, is a racist cracker and has not heard the civil rights message. How ironic is it that leaders in this country, both religious and just arrogant, seem to feel that the measure of the effectiveness of compassionate outreach is its success? So are they really saying it's only right to try and help if it works? Or is there some coincidence that Haitians and Africans share the same skin color? The work is not yet done. Martin Luther King is often remembered for his involvement in the civil rights movement, and rightly so. He was also critical of the Vietnam War, and perhaps most importantly, he introduced the very Gandhian notion of nonviolent resistance. And in a culture that is becoming more and more violent, day by day, we need our children educated about the value of nonviolent resistance. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I remember my childhood in what was then lily-white Wauwatosa. And I remember in 1968, or 7 or 8, being up north for our annual vacation, and the race riots were occurring, and the housing riots were occurring here in Milwaukee. And my parents expressed with some relief that Wauwatosa was going to line their garbage trucks up, blocking the streets on the border with the city of Milwaukee, so that the rioters could not march, or the marchers really were the issue, could not march into Wauwatosa. And I know people who had set up crossfires with their neighbors on residential intersections to open fire on the people that came down the street were they to do that. But I'm here to tell you, in Cana, it wasn't so different. The Milwaukee Fire Department hosed down marchers, and in Cana, Louisiana, the residents hosed down those of us who were marching in the street. It was actually very helpful because it was extremely hot, so it wasn't quite the same thing, and they weren't quite fire hoses, but the mentality is the same. The media have capitulated to the government, and we're involved in a war in which the media has agreed not to show pictures of the bodies coming back. And yet I remember Walter Cronkite when I was younger every night showing the bodies coming back. And some believe that while Martin Luther King was tolerated in the civil rights movement, when he started to move to focus on the Vietnam War, the government now found him much more unacceptable. And the conspiracy theorists that believe the government had a part in King's assassination, and I don't agree with that perspective, but believe that it was okay for him to be on civil rights, but not okay for him to talk about peace. It's ironic that some 45 years later, we find ourselves in the same place, embroiled in an endless war, still not beyond racism, still looking at folks in the developing world as if they're somehow pawns that we can manipulate, that somehow their human value is different, and that we can elect or not to elect whether to reach out to them based on cost-benefit analysis that thinly veils a racism that pervades so much of this country still. We've learned to take it underground, but it's still there. And so we in the white church perhaps need Dr. King more in some ways than the folks in the historic black churches do. Because we need him for a different reason. We need him to pull us out of our complacency, to pull us into the reality and the truth that we are all interconnected throughout the world. There really are only 6 degrees of separation. And the value of a human being has absolutely nothing to do with where he or she is born, what the ethnicity of the person is, or how much money they make. And if you doubt that, look to Jesus at the wedding in Cana, where in the daily life of a bunch of non-white folks, just like Jesus was, he touched them. It's time to change. It's time with white people to pray that we might overcome. But not just overcome for ourselves, but overcome for everybody. Recognize that all people are children of God. That there is no difference. And then when somebody's hurting, our duty as a child of God is to reach out with love and compassion. Nothing less will do.